everybody. My name is Valerie, and I am a librarian at the Schlesman Library. And this is my coworker.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen, another librarian at the Schlesman Library, part of the Denver Public Library.
And we're here today to do a little book discussion on the book, The World According to Humphrey by Betty Burney. And so we have a couple of discussion questions we're going to go through, and we hope you enjoyed the discussion. Go ahead, Kristen.
All right, let's get started. So, Val, question for you. So when you are reading a book or listening to a story, do you ever think about the person who is actually telling the story?
No, I don't always think about that. I think I just start reading it, and I never really make a conscious note of who is telling the story. But in this book, I did, because it was such an unusual person telling the story. And actually, it wasn't even a person, it was a hamster. So I really did notice when I read this book that it wasn't a person telling the story.
I agree. I loved that Humphrey the hamster was the person telling the story. And actually, the word for the person or animal who tells the story is called narrator. So a narrator can be someone who is in the story, or it could be someone who is outside of the story. But either way, the narrator is the person telling the story. In this case, it was Humphrey. So knowing that, and knowing that Humphrey is a hamster and also the narrator, how did that make a difference, Val, and what you thought about the book and how you thought the book played out?
Well, what I really kind of put myself in Humphrey's place and thought about how he sees the world from being such a small animal. And for example, there are lots of times in the book where he gets out of his cage because of the lock that doesn't lock, and he is out in a room, and he has to get around the room in such a weird way. So for example, if you were a person, you wanted to get from one side of a room to another, you could just walk a few steps and that would be it. But being that Humphrey is a little hamster and he's so small, for him to get from one side of the room to another is quite the feat of engineering, because he has to walk on little thin ledges. He might have to swing on the ropes that are on the blinds in the windows. He might have to jump over gaps in shelving, or he might have to jump over something. He might have to climb up furniture, or slide down a pole or something. So he has a big job ahead of him to get from one side of a room to another. And he's a very good planner, though. He has to plan how he's going to do it before he does it. And so it's a lot more difficult for a little hamster to do that than a person. So I noticed that right away and thought, boy, by the time I finished going across the room, coming back, if I was a hamster, I would be exhausted. And I think a couple times, and actually when he was done doing things out in the room, he would actually go back and sleep quite a long time before he was ready to face the world again. So I can understand why.
Right. Yeah, those are great points. I actually hadn't thought about that. And I agree. It must be quite the workout for him to move to any part of that classroom. So yeah, those are really great points, something I hadn't thought of. One thing I actually did think of about Humphrey being the narrator is, so his cage in the classroom was in the back of the classroom. And so Humphrey had, this view of the classroom. He could see all of the students because he was behind them. And he often saw things that went on that even the teacher didn't see. So I thought that was pretty funny. And he would see the good and the bad that happened in that classroom. One example being when he saw Garth shoot rubber bands at AJ, because Mrs. Brisbane didn't see it, but Humphrey did. And so that was kind of interesting that he tells a story, since he had such a good viewpoint from the back of the room. He also, I think, having that viewpoint from the back of the room, he was able to give all of the kids nicknames. And he would listen to Mrs. Brisbane, and the things that she pointed out about each child. And from those things, he gave the kids nicknames such as Stop Giggling Gail and Speak Up Saya, and many more that I can't really think of right now, but that were pretty funny.
Well, speaking of nicknames, I thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about if we had to give ourselves a nickname. Normally, a nickname is given to you by somebody else. And a lot of us have nicknames just based on our name. Like my name is Valerie, but my nickname is Val, so it's just a shortened version of my name. And I think, Kristen, were you always called Kristen? Do you have a nickname?
I did have a nickname as a child, and some of my family members still call me by my nickname. So my full name is Kristen, but a lot of my relatives and family members called me Chrissy. So that was my nickname as a child growing up.
Well, I think it'd be fun to give ourselves a nickname. And I was thinking about it, and I came up with a couple nicknames that if I were to give myself a nickname, what they might be. So the first nickname I came up with was based on something that I always say to people, and I say a lot, and that is, could you do me a favor? So my nickname would be, could you do me a favor, Val? And the reason I say that a lot is when I ask somebody to do something for me, I'm kind of, I feel kind of bad sometimes asking somebody to help me, which I shouldn't, but so I always kind of put it in that way because it makes me feel like I'm giving them the option, whether they don't have to help me if I say it that way. So I always say, could you do me a favor? And then I ask for what I want. And sometimes it kind of irritates people. They just say, why don't you just ask me? But so that would be one name I would give myself. Is there a name that a nickname you might give to yourself, Kristen?
Well, there is, but I can also tell you, I'm going to start calling you, can you do me a favor, Val?
Oh, yeah.
So, just so you know. But yes, if I had to give myself a nickname, it would probably be Clean Up Your Clutter, Kristen. Because I live with 3 other people. I live with my 2 children and my husband. And I feel like I'm constantly telling everyone to clean up their stuff. Clean off the table, clean off the counter, clean off the floor, pick up your shoes. So yeah, mine would be Clean Up Your Clutter, Kristen, for sure.
I also thought of another nickname for myself based on what people say to me a lot. And so that would be, what did you say? Val. Because even though I don't think I mumble or I don't speak very loudly, my husband has one of his ears he can't hear as well out of. And so sometimes, lots of times when I'm talking, especially if I'm not facing him, he'll always say, what did you say? What did you say? And my dad too would do that. My dad's 82 years old. So especially if he doesn't have his hearing aid in and I talk to him, he lots of times will say, what did you say? So at home, I sometimes have to talk louder or so they can hear me. Then, but normal people who normally don't have a hearing problem would be able to hear me fine. So I have to remember then when I come to work or come somewhere else that I don't have to talk that loud, because then my nickname would be, "You don't have to talk that loud, Val." So that would be my other nickname.
That's great. And if someone was to give me a nickname, it would probably be Speak Up Kristen, because I kind of had the same problem with my husband. A lot of times he thinks I mumble, and he says, "Speak up, dear, I can't hear you." So Speak Up Kristen would probably apply to me as well. So we have that in common.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, Kristen, but I thought this was a really fun book to read, and I really enjoyed reading a book that had an animal as the narrator as opposed to a person, because I think it was a whole different way of looking at what was happening in the book. And so I really enjoyed it.
I loved the book too, and it makes me excited to read the rest of the books in the Humphrey series. And there's several, so I can't wait to get started on those as well. So,
well, thanks, Kristen, for talking to me about the book. And
yeah, thanks for chatting.
yeah, we'll hopefully we'll talk to you soon. And I hope everybody takes an opportunity to read "The World According to Humphrey" by Betty Burney. Thanks.
All right. Bye, Val. Bye, everyone.